Good morning. We just had a crazy race at Paris-Roubaix, which is designed to be crazy. It's by definition crazy, but this was kind of the messiest one I've seen in a long time. But it was interesting to see how the guys took their struggles and still came out in a lot of ways the way you would expect, the way you'd want, the way you'd hope. So I have theories on a lot of this. There was some equipment drama that we need to discuss and some favorites in the way they raced, and that we got a lot to talk about. I'm looking forward to this one. Reminder, this is available in audio-only format, ad-free. Links below for that. This episode was brought to you by NordVPN. This was great. This is one of those sponsors that hit me up, and I've been using NordVPN for years. A virtual private network is a tool that creates an encrypted tunnel for your data, for your internet. It protects your online identity and allows you to increase your security online. I do a lot of work on public Wi-Fi, coffee shops. This keeps hackers from stealing my passwords while I'm there. Also keeps that browsing data safe from government agencies, from advertisers. My followers probably like to watch bike racing, like to travel a lot. Race that you want to watch, the race that maybe you subscribe to at home, isn't available where you are. A VPN lets you easily access your paid home content wherever you happen to be. As VPNs go, NordVPN is fast, reliable, easy to use, and offers flexible plans for whatever you need. It takes one click. There's 8,900 servers across 130 different countries. Supports every major platform, Windows, Android, and you can use it on up to 10 devices. If you want to try it, NordVPN is risk-free. That's a 30-day money-back guarantee. For the best discount, use my link to sign up now, nordvpn.com/PHILGAIMON. You'll get an extra 4 months on their 2-year plan. One of the important things to remember about Paris-Roubaix is this is when I open registration for Cookie Fondo. So Phil's Cookie Fondo is open as of right now. I was sent to Roubaix on 48 hours notice in 2016. In a lot of ways, this was a sign that my retirement was coming, whether I knew it at that exact moment or not. And my retirement party ended up being Phil's Cookie Fondo at the end of that year. So kind of the tradition has become, we open registration at Roubaix, where I learned about my retirement for the retirement party. Anyway, this is the 10th anniversary of Phil's Cookie Fondo. Awesome ride in Malibu. The longest route is 100 miles. I do the 75, 80 mile version. There's also a 50. Like, you see me talking about Malibu and all the amazing hills here and the great riding. This is a chance to show it off. This is a chance for me to explain why Los Angeles is an amazing cycling destination and share it with you guys. It's also cookie themed, of course. As a racer, people brought me cookies my last few years. I just get to a race and there'd be folks, I can't explain exactly how this started, I can try, but folks would be waiting for me outside the team bus with cookies they brought or bought or recommended. And Phil's Cookie Fondo is my annual chance to give the cookies back to the people, to return that favor. You save $100 if you sign up at the registration opening price. So it is Phil's Cookie Fondo, built by Mac Construction, philsfondo.com. This is also my annual time to share my Paris-Roubaix experience in 2016. That was towards the end of my book, Draft Animals. I've posted those pages on all my socials and on the YouTube posts. I'll put a link below. But it's a fun story, and I think a good example of what Roubaix is like for almost everyone in the bike race, and also kind of a fun metaphor for life where your worst experiences in the actual moment are kind of the best memories in the long run. This is a big week for my events. 2 weeks from now is Whiskey Tango Fondo. We just did a course preview video for that. I did recon right after the Flanders video. We left, drove to Lone Pine, checked out. Everything's looking good in Lone Pine. I've been riding the gravel bike more, and so have a lot of the guys at Roubaix. The first thing I'm going to talk about with Roubaix is the equipment. There's a lot of big equipment features teams love to dork out. They set the bikes up with whatever their special equipment is, and they leave them on display for photographers and fans to document and then debate for the next few days. So I do have to weigh in on the debate, some of the gear. Roubaix famously known for these cobble sections, so that requires softer tires, wider tires. There's a lot of tire talk. There's also bike talk. And with equipment, it's really hard to separate what's a gimmick, what's marketing versus what's actually an improvement, what's a marginal gain from the mechanics for the team at the benefit of the riders. And there's definitely like a trade-off here that we've seen over the last few years. I'm going to sound crotchety, I'm going to sound kids get off my lawn, but I believe that Roubaix is a place where you really do want tubular tires. Cyclocross and Paris-Roubaix, these are places where customers don't exist. It's really just like a pro racer focused spot, but you just can't have your tires rolling off your rims, and glue is the best way to do that. So from a customer perspective, from a regular user perspective, even someone like myself, tubeless is a big improvement. That's what you want at bike shops if you're a brand. That's what you want to push. That's what you want to promote. Their investment in these teams is, of course, marketing promotion. They've advanced enough There's arguments to be made for better rolling resistance in tubeless tires. I'm going to say that tubeless is probably even the best option for the Tour de France. Where it's a problem, though, where you can see the compromise is when a tubeless tire flats, and flats are inevitable at Paris-Roubaix, it's a disaster. The tire comes completely off the rim. You can't ride it. Whereas a tubular tire, it's glued. You can still roll a little bit. You're not going to stay in the front group necessarily, but if it's a slow puncture, you can hang on for a while, get a chance for the team car to get back to you. At least you're going to stay upright. Whereas a tubeless tire, it comes off and there's sealant everywhere. The tire's falling off the rim. It looks terrible on TV. And a lot of times, like, the rider could be on the ground. So we do days of this tire talk. Tade had a super wide tire squeezed into the front. He just had the widest tires he could possibly imagine. There was talk of maybe these are prototype rims that held an even wider, whatever. Visma Lisa bike had a whole thing. It was like a tire pressure control system, which was a valve that could be pumped, basically could be inflated on the fly while you're riding with a motor in the hub. To the UCI was like, guys, we don't do motors in hubs. Not anymore. We're done with that. And they were like, what do you mean we don't do motors in hubs? There was a whole uproar, and then they just kind of shut up. Trek had a thing. They had tire inserts. So there's a tubeless thing, and then there's an insert that's supposed to, they claimed, I believe, that it was impossible to flat this setup, which all of that's interesting and all of that's clickable. And I'm going to read about that until you get to the first cobble sector where Mads Pedersen flatted. A lot of the riders are on different frames than they are in the road races. They're on often more relaxed geometry, more kind of gravel bike style frames. These could hold wider tire, and the marketing versus practicality of the frame choice is just impossible to figure out at this point. When Mathieu van der Poel chooses the Canyon Endurance frame, I'm interested. When he chooses it, except they have a big marketing campaign around it, and it's a new launch for Paris-Roubaix. Well, he didn't choose it at all. He's being forced upon it, whether he likes it or not, because that's where his bread's buttered. So there was all this hoopla and talk about their new endurance bike. And then on race day, he was on the Canyon Air Road. I didn't see an explanation for that. I'm assuming he wanted it. Modern Adventure and Human Powered Health used the Factor Monza frame, which it always feels like I'm picking on Factor because they're a former sponsor, but they're the brand that I kind of know the best because I rode those bikes exclusively for many years. So it's close to me. This was marketed as like their Fondo bike originally when it came out. One of the arguments was like, you don't have to have a saddlebag, and that saves a few watts because your tube is in there. It was one price notch down from their high end, from their Ostro. So it was sort of like the amateur Fondo long ride killer bike. At least that was the marketing that I was understood. And then suddenly they had like Justin Williams racing crits on it. And then later they announced they're racing that bike at Roubaix. And Hincapie was quoted as, we're willing to accept the 2.5 watt savings for the increased durability of this frame. And I'm like, isn't that just an attack, A, on your other frames, that they're not durable enough for Roubaix, which I kind of disagree with, to be honest. And the other one is bike brands have been trying to sell us 2.5 watts for an extra $3,000 for the last few years. Like every watt savings in these frames costs $1,000 to the consumer, to the point where it's sort of a little bit silly. So they've been trying to convince consumers to buy the new Factor 1 Hyper bike, or whatever you want to call it, which is, I think, twice the price of the Factor Monza, with these claims of wind tunnels and marginal gains, except at the epitome, at the peak of flat racing where crosswinds are often critical, that bike is not even in the conversation. If 2.5 watts is supposed to matter for consumers, why doesn't it matter at Paris-Roubaix? I'm just confused. And this isn't me trying to pick on Factor. I just think that's a good, probably metaphor for what all the brands are doing, what all the parts are doing at these races. They're using it as a marketing platform, and the claims and the dorkery is sort of just secondary for, this is what we've got to push right now. A good example, years ago when I was sponsored by Cannondale, they had the Synapse, that came out, and that was supposed to be a gravel bike. And, they order a bunch of them, and it's promoted as a gravel bike. And it just kind of didn't land as a gravel bike. It was a little bit too road bikey. So that was when I believe they invented the endurance bike category, and they were trying to message like, this is the do everything bike, but it was kind of just, it was fine for everything, but it was also like not great for anything. I remember like the marketing manager telling me, oh yeah, Rigo is going to race this. Rigoberto Urán is going to race this at the Tour de France this year. And just from riding it around in Malibu, I was like, A, no, he's not. Like over Rigo's dead body, would he actually race at a tour? And B, you don't want him to, because it's not right for that. And it was just funny, even then, like their only idea for marketing was make the pros ride it. They didn't try to make me ride it, which would have made it, make Phil do KOMs on it. Like I'd have to tolerate that. I'd have no answer. But for the marginal gains, the best of the best, I think that was a good bike for Roubaix and just about nothing else. This isn't me trying to pick on my former sponsors. These are just the ones that I've had experience with that I know about. And I'm guessing all the brands, all the parts have the same stuff. You sort of see how the riders would be compromised by the gear options and the sponsorships and those who write the checks, of course. And I think the race today had a lot of good examples of that. Okay, the equipment talk is important, but that's enough. The race, 260 kilometers. The cobble sectors kind of increase as you get further in. There's a lot of flat pavement at the beginning. Normally that's a place for early break. But the break often doesn't stick, doesn't get very far at Roubaix. First 100K, pretty uneventful. There was no early break today. There was a tailwind, which makes it harder for early break. And it's also, Roubaix is a race that doesn't follow the script because you just don't want to give anyone 10 minutes going to those cobble sectors. No one wants to let someone super strong up the road. So if there is a break, they're going to keep it closer. And the teams are just going to be super picky on who that is. So today that meant really it was nobody. Most of the controlling was done by UAE. Bisma Lisa Bike and Alpecin were also, of course, involved. 146K, Wout had a flat. Took him a while to get back in a position to get back to the front where he wanted to be. 118K to go. Tadej had a little drama. He had a flat tire. And one of the things that's tricky about Roubaix is typically, when you're in a big pack, when you're in a controlled course, when you're in a wide course, the teams all have their cars there. At Roubaix, the cars aren't allowed in a lot of cobble sections, or they're only allowed behind whatever the group is that didn't just explode. So they're just not as accessible to the team leaders as most races. So the Shimano neutral support, a lot of pressure on those guys. So Tadej ended up on a Shimano neutral bike, which might have been set up for him. If I was Shimano, I would have a bike measured up to Tadej, measured up to Van der Poel and Wout for that exact occasion. Not what he wanted, better than nothing, better than standing there kind of just shaking your head. But he was on that bike for a while, and it was clear he was not enjoying it. But he finally got on his own bike after one of the cobble sections. The team car basically just slammed into the middle of everyone in a feed zone, blocked off where they had to, didn't give a shit. I understand everyone's very stressed out. I'm betting there's going to be a fine for that. He's got 40 Swiss francs for that. If you told him it'd be 1,000 Swiss franc fine to have his new bike a kilometer earlier, he would have just paid it. He ended up in a group that was 2 minutes down. Honestly, I would have thought his day was over, but his teammates waited for him. They worked together. They took their time. And they rejoined the group around 100K to go. Mathieu van der Poel at that point was attacking. I don't think he was primarily worried about Tadej, but he's just going to race his race. He's the favorite. He looked great. But before he even got started attacking, he was really just softening the field at this point. He gets a flat tire. So it's like 95K to go. You've got Van der Poel on the side of the road. Philipsen gives him his bike. Van der Poel starts riding on Philipsen's bike, which already not a great decision to give up Philipsen. Van der Poel gets like 20 meters up and realizes he can't clip in. The pedals are wrong somehow. He's like, yes, get back on your bike. I'll get another bike from somebody else. He ended up with a wheel from, I believe, Tibor Del Grosso, and he's back on. Now Mathieu van der Poel is 2 minutes down. He ends up getting a wheel from, I believe, Tibor Del Grosso. So by that point, Tadej has just undone the 2 minutes he lost, and now Van der Poel's 2 minutes back, except he's a lot closer to the finish. Other favorites, Ghana was someone who for sure could have been a spoiler or a factor today at least. And I think it was 3 flats. It might have been more that he got. And one of those was like a disaster or tubeless situation where he flats and you think you can ride around a corner, but he's not. He was on his ass. He was fine, but like a spectator is picking up his bike. And, that's going to hurt in the morning. When Ghana crashes too, I feel bad for the pavement. But it seemed like every time Ghana got himself back in the mix, he would back out of it. 60K to go is where I tell you to start watching. You've got the favorites all kind of sorted out. Even after all that drama, the guys pretty much end up where they should be, except Van der Poel is 20 seconds down the front group. Wout is the first one to kind of put in a real attack. Tadej closes. Mads Pedersen is with him. Tadej counters. Pedersen's not there anymore. So last 50K, you've got this kind of fun cooperation between Wout and Tadej, who are just going to work enough to make sure that Van der Poel can't catch back on. But they only have 20 seconds to play with, and that's really right in the zone of if anybody flats or crashes or drops their chain, Van der Poel's right back in the mix. And it's a fun watch because, of course, you have Tadej, who's insanely strong, but you have Wout, who just knows what he's doing on this course like very few others. It's hard to describe just how well the Belgians as classic specialists know these courses from recon, from racing it as a junior. I remember doing recon with Johan van Summeren, and he knew the fastest way through every roundabout. He knew, like, before you get to the sector, this side, the left one's faster, this side, the right side's faster, this side, the top is faster. In some parts, there'll be like a dirt bit next to the cobblestone. Sometimes they're in the grass for part of it. Maybe there's a section where a couple cobblestones have come out, so there's like a rut on the left side. These guys know they're on the right side. You don't know why until you're trying to pass them on the left side and you hit that rut. So you've got Tadej with all the watts in the world, but still a fish out of water. And then you've got Wout, who is a fish very much in water, and a shark of Mathieu van der Poel, who's kind of in between. And you can see Tadej knowing that he has to attack. He has to put time into Wout. He's not going to beat him in a sprint, but there's just no place for him to do it. He's just holding on for dear life. It's 17K to go. Tadej gives it a dig on a cobbled sector, and Wout definitely has his number. He's not going to get dropped. Tadej puts about 2 bike lengths on him, which is exactly the right amount because Tadej flies around a corner, almost crashes himself out, and Wout just closes that gap perfectly. Had he been there, Tadej might have taken him out on accident. It looked to me like after that, Tadej was pretty resigned to just come second. He seemed like he was doing more work on the paved sections. He pulled the last bit going towards Roubaix, going into the velodrome. He pulled the lap on the velodrome. I'm not going to say he gave up. He put in a sprint that certainly would have beat me, but it was always going to be Wout. Wout has won plenty of races. He certainly had nothing to prove, but this classic season has not been great for him. Wout van Aert actually managed to look and I think feel like an underdog winner. He was crying. I actually felt happy for him. He definitely saved his classic season, and really, if that's all he gets for the whole season, not bad. The Chiefs could only 15 seconds down to the finish. I think Mathieu van der Poel had a tough time with everyone ganging up on him. The last few K, they weren't going to let him have an easy third place. It was Jasper Stuyven who came in ahead of that group. Honestly, like of the favorites first, second tier, I would say Stuyven kind of had the best scenario. I didn't see any bike drama for him. Correct me if I'm wrong. He certainly earned it, but he might also be the only guy in that group who had a clean run. Soudal, Quickstep, whatever that team is called now, they know how to do the Cobble Classics. They're Belgian. They do it right. They had him prepped. Women's race a lot shorter, 140 kilometers, so it played out differently. They did have an early break, but again, Roubaix style, they kept it close. It was one rider. She got a minute and a half. Normally, most races, they give 10 minutes to somebody like that. Roubaix, they kept a tight leash on everything. Also did have some earlier cobble sectors than the men, so the racing kind of was always going to start sooner for the ladies. Lots of flats in this race. Also, Alison Jackson, a previous winner. Zoe Backstead would have been an outside favorite. She flatted. But this one also, I'd start watching around 50K to go. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, last year's winner, went on the attack. Each cobble sector, the group would get narrowed down with attacks by Visma Lease bike. Very aggressive was Franziska Koch from FD. An attack from Pauline Ferrand-Prévot brought it down to 4 riders. She was joined by her teammate Marianne Vos, Blanca Vos from FDJ, and Franziska Koch. Couple more attacks. Blanca Vos got dropped. That was nice. There's too many Vosses in there. Now we're just down to Mariana. So it comes down to 2 Visma Lease bike riders versus 1. Tough position for Koch to be in, except there's also no pressure. When it's 2 against 1, she's not expected to take 1 pull. They're just going to have to attack her and get rid of her. But obviously they like that gap. It looked to me like they had a discussion where Pauline, if you can get away, you get away. If it's going to stay together, Pauline's going to do the lead out. They're going to trust Marianne Vos for the sprint. Solid plan. Pauline definitely put her attack, but didn't get anywhere. So instead of attacking Koch, they're going to make her do a lot of work, and Vos stays clean for the sprint. That was their gamble. They get to the velodrome, and I like when Roubaix ends up in an actual track race. That's kind of the point. It doesn't happen that often. Usually it's just so blown up. But they're up and down on the boards. Ferrand-Prévot ultimately did the lead out. Super tight sprint. Koch got it on Marianne Vos. Okay, on to the categories. If I was watching in person, where I want to be, you want to be everywhere for Roubaix. Roubaix is one of those races. Flanders is similar, but Roubaix more so, where if you know how to do it, you go to this sector first, you watch them pass there, and then you buzz over to that sector. There's all these shortcuts. There's ways through. I would find someone who's experienced. I would find Jared Gruber is a race photographer. I forget who's working for now, but he can watch the race from 75 places in the same day. I would stop Jared Gruber or someone like that who's been to the race 10, 20, 30 times. They have it mapped out. They have it timed out. Biggest winner, biggest loser. Honestly, I got to give both of those to Tadej. The guy just manages to make himself relevant in a race he has no business lining up at. There's definitely a lot of build-up and prep and expectations. And I'll give him excuses. Lots of stuff went wrong, but it's Roubaix. Stuff goes wrong for everyone. And other than just like a huge bit of luck where Wout landed in the last 10K and leaves Tadej alone to solo win, I just don't see any way to replay this that Tadej wins. That'll be your unanswered hypothetical. I think you replay this race 30 times and Mathieu van der Poel wins 21 out of them. Wout wins the other 9. Tadej's getting 0. It doesn't matter how much stronger Tadej is than these other guys. He needs the hill to create that separation, and it's just not there. Armchair race organizer, no notes. Roubaix messy. It's supposed to be. Armchair team director, bad times for the Visma Lease bike women. It just doesn't look good to lose a 2 against 1 battle. I see their logic. I see their tactical plan, but it was close enough that a couple more attacks, I think, would have worn out Koch and made the difference. It's funny how much these teams lean on their star rider, and I'm certainly not saying that UAE shouldn't have given Tadej all the credit he deserved, but to see Florian Vermeer stop for Tadej when Florian, you want to kind of have a backup plan. If we're to see Philipsen stop for anyone, even if it's Mathieu van der Poel, wouldn't you kind of want Philipsen in there just to hedge your bets to race for 5th? Like, I get it, your leader's your leader, but Philipsen with a clean run in the chase group versus Mathieu van der Poel, who's got a 2-minute gap to overcome. I don't know. Mishap of the day. It's hard to rank whose flat tire was the worst, but got to give it to van der Poel, that whole mess. Introducing a new category, the Still Got It Award. That's got to go to Mariana Voss. And then what's happening on the team bus? It's kind of a relief because there's so many races that finish and the team bus is sitting there just like, man, how do we beat Tade? And this race, it's Tade sitting there. He can win every other race at will, but this one, I think he stumped on. This is his white whale, and that makes it just far more interesting to him. I think he wouldn't care if it was easy. Okay, that was Paris-Roubaix. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching or listening. The sun came out here. I'm going to go ride my bike. You should do the same. See ya.